So guys, when we look at costs, we are looking at right now short run costs. Okay, so we're looking at short run costs. In the short run, we know this, that there is both fixed factors, there is fixed factors, and then there is variable factors. Isn't that true? What are fixed factors? Fixed factors are those factors that do not vary with the level of output, that does not change with the level of output, and that is basically called, such as building, for example, could be a fixed factor, while labor could be your variable factor. So when you look at building as a fixed factor, they could be what we call a fixed factor causing what we call something called a fixed cost. And then there's a variable factor that will result in what we call variable cost. And fixed cost plus variable cost will make up your total cost. So for example, in our case, we looked at, remember the washing company. So the fixed cost would be the rent, which was the capital cost, let's say, and the variable cost was the wages to labor. So wages could be your variable cost. So in the short run, because there is fixed factor and variable factor, that's why there will be fixed cost and variable cost. And fixed cost plus variable cost will make up your total cost. Does that make sense? Any question before we move on? So guys, fixed cost is a cost that doesn't vary with the level of output. So, and when the production level changes, for example, you produce more of a good, the value of the fixed cost will remain constant, like rent, we just talked about it. For example, a company rent premises, the rent on the premise will remain the same whether you make zero, nothing, or produce at full capacity. On the other hand, variable cost is a cost which you'll see very directly with outputs. So when you produce more, variable cost will also change. For example, if you're a steel maker and you're using iron ore, so the more steel you make, the more iron you need, and therefore the higher will be your variable cost. Make sense? And total cost is made up of your variable cost plus fixed cost. I want to now show you guys this in terms of a diagram. I mean, in terms of not only a diagram, but also a table. Remember our example that we did here? So I'm going to go back to this example. And today we'll focus on this part of it. So we had remembered two factors. We had labor and we had two factors, which was capital. So this is going back to the old example. We had capital and we had labor. The capital basically was your machinery. And let's say the rent of the capital was $75. Okay. The labor, let's say, is being paid. So this is rent of the capital is $75. And let's say labor is paid wages, which is $60 per worker. Got it? So let's say this is what your labor and rent, these are the costs. Remember, capital was your fixed factor. So quantity of capital, as I keep on making more and more of output, it's not changing. And that's because it's a fixed factor, it has what we call a fixed cost. So if you look at it, as I keep on hiring labor, my fixed cost is fixed at 75. So it's for 0, it's 75, even for 6, it's 75. So as I produce more and more and more, my fixed cost is not changing. But my variable cost, guys, is important to see. My variable cost is $60. So when I hired 0 worker, my fixed cost was, variable cost was 0. When I hired my first worker, my variable cost is 60. For the second worker, it's 120. And as you are hiring more and more workers, your variable cost is going up. 120 is 2 times 60, 180 is 3 times 60, 4 times 60 is 240, and so on. Do we agree with this, guys? Does that make sense? So this plus this is equal to 75. So total fixed cost plus total variable cost is your total cost. It is increasing by 60. Very good job. Total cost is increasing by 60 as well. Okay, total cost is increasing by 60 as you go on. Isn't that true? Do you all agree? But what about total output, guys? How is total output increasing? Total output is increasing by 30, and then what you call it? 90 minus 30 is 60, and then 40, and then 25, 17, and 30. Make sense? Are you all looking at this table, guys? Yeah. Are we any questions so far? Any questions that anything that doesn't make sense? Are you all so I want to recap production, because then I want to sort of link that up to our cost. So just a small recap of production to talk about the cost, because then it's going to be important when we are doing uh, cost, because what happens in production will have an implication in cost. So whatever happens in production will have an implication in cost. So production we had 2 workers and 6 workers. Remember this was happening last week. 2 workers and 6 workers. For the first 2 workers, and by the way, this is my quantity of labor. This is our quantity of labor. Okay, this is our TP, and this is our MP. Okay, we said initially output rises at a faster rate, then output rises at a slower rate, and then output can also start to fall. When output is rising at a faster rate, we said this, that MP rises, and then MP falls, and then MP can also go negative. Okay, so for the first 2 workers, guys, we saw, for the first 2 workers, I want to sort of make a line here. For the first 2 workers, guys, we saw output was increasing at a faster rate, and for the next beyond 2 workers, output was rising slowly. In other words, we saw TP was, in fact, let's stick with MP to make it short. MP was rising, and then onward MP is falling. But look at this, guys. There is this marginal cost, and I want to talk about this marginal cost. Look at marginal cost. What is marginal cost? We'll talk about in 1 minute. For the first 2 worker, my marginal cost is going down. But beyond 2 workers, can you guys see this? My marginal cost is going up. Do you guys agree with me? What is marginal cost? We'll talk about this in 1 minute. But do you notice this, guys? Marginal cost is going down 2 to 1, and then marginal cost starts to increase. Do you all agree with me? MC means marginal cost. Yeah. What is marginal cost? What's the formula for marginal cost? Let's talk about formula for marginal cost. Moving on, guys. So marginal cost is basically, so what is marginal cost? Let's write formula for marginal cost. And marginal cost is really, really important for us to understand. Just like MP is important. So एक तो चीज पक्की है. One thing what is happening is when MP is going up, MC is going down. When MP is going down, MC is going up. What exactly is MC? MC is basically change in TC over change in quantity of output. In other words, MC is the additional additional cost for 1 extra unit of output. When you make 1 extra unit of output, how much is your additional cost? Look at this, guys. Look at what we've done here. When you made 30 extra units, right, your cost was going up by 60. So 60 divided by 30 is the change in cost is 60, change in output is 30, 60 divided by 30 is 2, right? This 2 is 60 divided by 30. This 1 is 60 divided by 60. Make sense? Are you all with me? Does that make sense, guys? So do we get the formula for marginal cost? So marginal cost is change in total cost over change in quantity of output. So 60 divided by 40, 60 divided by 25, 60 divided by 17, 60 divided by 13, and you get your values for marginal cost. So what is happening with marginal cost, you can see this, is this that as you, for the first 30 units, one extra unit was costing you $2. Then for the next 60, one extra unit was costing you 1. Then for the next 40, it was costing you 1.5, and then started to cost you more and more and more. So first the marginal cost went down, and then marginal cost started to go up. Right? Do we agree with this? What is happening in the table? And this is by the way, using the same example. We're not going to do these guys, not for today. These guys are not important. We're going to focus still marginal cost because I want to show you this in terms of a diagram. Are we happy with whatever we've done so far? Are we going to move on? Okay, so guys, let's see this now in terms of a diagram. And I'm going to you're going to see, in fact, I want to draw it right next to this friend of ours, production friends. Let's just make it right next to them so that we can compare and contrast later. Okay, so you will see, we'll make two diagrams. So I'm going to make my total cost diagram and marginal cost diagram. Okay, this is my quantity. This is an important thing to understand, guys. This was quantity of labor. I'm going to put quantity of output because I'm going to look at how my output is behaving, how my cost is behaving as compared to how my cost is behaving as compared to every single unit produced. Okay, Haris, you want to know what marginal cost is? So look at this. Marginal cost is change in total cost over change in quantity of output. So one extra unit, when you made 30 more, change in output was 30, change in cost is 60, 60 over 30. So cost isn't really, per unit cost isn't changing by 60. Per unit cost is 60 divided by 30, and then 60 divided by 60. Each additional worker is bringing a different amount. So marginal cost isn't linearly changing. It's a non-linear relationship. In fact, marginal cost is falling and then increasing. Make sense? Guys, first two workers. So let's divide this graph as well. First 2 workers and then 6 workers, 2 workers and then 6 workers. 2 workers were bringing how much output? And the answer is 2 workers are bringing 90. So I'm going to write 90 here. And then 6 workers are bringing 185. I'm going to write 185 here. Why? Because either is output and labor is corresponding. So this is 90 and 185. Make sense, guys? So what is happening? For the first 2 workers, output was rising at a faster rate, which means you will see, and I'm going to explain this in 1 minute. I'm not going to start from 0. I'm going to start from 75 because total cost, guys, look at this total cost. When you made 0, the cost was still 75. That was the fixed cost. So my total cost at 0 is 75, and then 135, 195, and so on. So for the first 2 workers or 90 units, my cost is going to rise at a slower rate. And then cost is going to rise at a faster rate. Why am I saying that? Because if I find the slope of this graph, guys, this is important. We need to all pay attention that if I want to find the slope of this line, my slope of this line is going to be what? My slope will be change in y over change in x. That's the slope. That's the rate. Remember, rate is slope. Is going to be change in total cost over change in quantity. In other words, the slope of TC is marginal cost. And I just told you guys what is happening with marginal cost. We just found it out. Marginal cost was going down. Marginal cost was going down and then was going up. For the first two workers on 90 units of output, marginal cost was going down. And then marginal cost was going up, which means when marginal cost is going down, which means cost is increasing at a slower rate. The rate is marginal cost. That rate is going down, which means cost is increasing at a slower rate. Then the rate is going up, which means cost is increasing at a faster rate. Isn't that true, guys? So look at what is happening. When productivity is going up, MP is rising, workers are very productive, utilization of capital is really good, cost is going down. Marginal cost is going down. Why? Because each additional worker is adding less and less to cost, right? Exactly, Haris. Total cost is cumulative as well. Then law of diminishing return happens. MP starts to fall, which means output starts to rise slowly, but cost will start to rise faster. So when MP falls, MC rises. When MP falls, MC rises, and when MP rises, MC falls. In other words, when MP is at its maximum, MC is at its lowest. So highest point of MP is the lowest point of MC. It's corresponding to lowest point of MC. Are you all with me? Does that make sense? So in other words, what happens in production has a role to play in cost. When the law of diminishing returns happen, after two workers, MP starts to fall. And that is why MC starts to rise. So if somebody asks you, why does MC rise? And you be like, because of the law of diminishing return. Because MP falls, MC rises. So when output rises faster, cost rises slower. Output rises slower, cost rises faster. Make sense, guys? Are we good? So that's why production is really important to understand, because whatever happens in production will have an implication on the cost.